Welcome back to another part of Help. I need to record a video audition. So in this, we've been talking about different microphones. We've been talking about different audio interfaces, different ways to actually record. So I want to continue our discussion of microphones with pickup patterns and how that can affect where you actually place the microphone. So there are a few different things about pickup patterns. The cardioid pickup pattern is probably the most common. So you want to think about that heart shape as applying to the direction that the microphone is going to pick up. This is a front address microphone, meaning you have to talk right into the front, or the sound source should come right in the front. Whereas a microphone like the one we were just using in the last example, this is a side address. You actually talk into the side of the microphone where the diaphragm faces flat forward. So where that diaphragm is determines what this shape is. Now, the SM57 dynamic and most microphones are probably in the cardioid position, meaning they pick up best at about 110 degrees in front of the microphone. So if you thought of a 110 degree angle coming off the front of the microphone, that would be this. Now, if you're recording in a bad environment, like a concrete box practice room at your school or your bedroom or something like that, this is probably your best choice because it's not going to be affected by sounds that are bouncing around. Whereas a figure of 8 or bi-directional microphone pattern would pick up both things in the front and the back, and an omnidirectional would pick up sounds all around in all directions equally. So an omnidirectional might be really nice if you're a high school student who is able to have access to your auditorium at school, and that way you can pick up the sound of you playing your instrument and the natural ring of the auditorium. But do know anything that happens in the audience is going to be reflected in your recording as well, because it picks up on the back side of the microphone just as good as it picks up on the front. So I would only recommend you consider trying the bidirectional or omnidirectional if you have a room that sounds really good naturally. So things to remember when you are using microphones. If you're using the condenser microphone, you will always need phantom power. Remember, that's the one that looks like a studio spot. You will need to hit the 48V or the phantom power button. You've seen the 48V button on this interface, and on this interface it's actually a toggle switch. It must be turned on if you are using a condenser microphone. You want to make sure that you give each microphone the appropriate amount of gain. That's the sensitivity. Test it at your loudest volume and make sure you're not clipping that will get into distortion. Dynamic microphones will require more gain than their condenser counterparts. Most microphones will pick up in a cardioid pattern, so look for where the diaphragm is in the microphone. Some microphones will have the option to select different switches to go between different patterns, so you can actually try different things. And there is a way to turn your SM57 into an omnidirectional. If you want to experience that, it'll just require a piece of electrical tape. Most dynamic microphones seem to be front address like this, and most condensers are side address, at least the large diaphragm condensers. If you're a classical vocalist, you don't have to be like all up on the microphone like you've seen those people in movie studios in the movies. You don't have to do that. I'm right now a good distance away, and you're able to hear me very clearly. And as far as a classical singer goes, you could be even further away, so the microphone could be 12, 18 inches, even further. It will capture your voice quite well. This can also be advantageous for helping avoid plosives and syllables that have a lot of pop or harshness behind them. If you're an instrumentalist, you definitely don't need to be playing right up on the microphone. For instance, if you're going to mic a saxophone, a lot of people like to stick the microphone right in the bell of the saxophone. And really, there are just a few notes that are coming sound right out the bell of the instrument. So you want to be further away from the instrument so you can capture the full range. If you're not careful, you're only going to get the notes right there at the bell, and the high notes and the low notes are actually going to disappear in the recording because your gain is set lower because you're so close to the instrument that it doesn't pick up the instrument evenly. And with a classical recording like this, you're trying to pick up the full nuance of the instrument. So being further away is a really good idea. And remember, like a trumpet player, you don't want to put your bell right into the diaphragm of the microphone. Your band director, or if you're a band director, you don't like hearing a trumpet player play right with their bell toward your eyeballs and ears. You like that bell to be down and shooting in the ensemble. So the same effect needs to apply here. You don't want the bell of the instrument like straight down the diaphragm of the microphone, because that's going to be a more harsh and unpleasing sound. So really think about where the microphone is set up. If you're recording in a concrete box of a practice room, remember that's pretty terrible recording space because sound is just going to bounce all around. So you might want to consider draping some moving blankets over a music stand off camera. And if you've got a music stand off camera and you've got these blankets, maybe a rack of uniforms, something like that, that can also absorb a lot of sound. There are things like the SE reflection filter or the Chaotica eyeball that can help you reduce unwanted reflections in your space. You can try to remove any objects that will cause sympathetic vibrations like snare drums, cymbals. Plastic boxes with a lid on them will cause that weird shake if you get just the right note. Check your fluorescent light fixtures. Some of those will seem to vibrate with particular pitches. I know Concert F tends to be a really high vibrating source for a lot of fluorescent light bulbs fixtures in my experience. If you can hear something buzzing while you play, the microphone will hear it too. If you're on stage in a nice auditorium, you can consider standing further away from the microphone and getting the gain right so that you can hear the natural resonance of the hall. And remember that in a bad recording space, a dynamic microphone is more forgiving. So a lot of times you'll be playing on somewhere that has a tile floor. I know our recording studio and Roaring Records has a tile floor, which drives me nuts sometimes. So we put down rugs, and here's kind of the reason behind putting down the rug. If you put the rug down here and you aim the microphone down from up above, then you're not getting the reflections off of the floor headed straight back at the microphone. The floor, being a rug, will absorb the sound waves and send less back up into the microphone. If you have concrete walls, this is going to help because the concrete walls aren't bouncing sound as straight back at the diaphragm because the diaphragm's pointed toward the floor. You're still getting the full range of the instrument, which will sound really nice, but you're not getting the reflection vibrations of the standing waves that are bouncing around your room. So this is a really good way to mic a wind instrument. Remember, if it was a trumpet player, this would still be fine because you're getting that microphone pointed at the bell. You're still going to get a pleasant sound, I promise, without sticking the microphone right in the bell of the trumpet. As far as setting up a microphone into an audio interface into your computer, this is the way you would do it. Microphone, XLR cable into your audio interface USB. If you had some kind of other camera, you could go out of the headphone jack with a male-to-male cable and go straight into the microphone input on your nice camera. I know there are options like this to go around the new GoPro Hero 8s and 9s. These will add a microphone slot to your GoPro, so if you want to use a high-end microphone with a GoPro, you certainly can by buying the media mod. Again, these are going to be video demos for all the different things that I've talked about here with different microphones. You can see that the different microphones are listed here as each option is. You can actually play 3 different videos here. These were all captured at the exact same time using 3 different options. For video, here's a demo of how to set up OBS. All these things are available to you in this YouTube playlist for you to check out in detail and decide which option would work best for you. You can QR click this to be able to view it. And we got one more video in this, but if you found the understanding of how to set up your microphone helpful, please click the thumbs up and subscribe below. If not, come back for the last video in the series.